Let's discuss all of this with Nathan Sparks, who is Chief Executive of 𝗥𝗘𝗦𝗦, the campaign group calling for greater press regulation. And in fact, the very thing you campaign for, could that have prevented that article being printed at all?
Absolutely. If we'd had the Leveson system of independent regulation implemented and compulsory for all national newspapers, then instead of being a member of IPSO, which the Sun is, and this is a complaints handler, it's got the Sun's parent company's legal director on a body which controls IPSO's rules. The IPSO standards code is written by a group of newspaper editors who have packed it with loopholes that lets them get away with stuff like this. The whole IPSO body, all of the power in IPSO is outsourced to the newspaper industry itself. And that's how we've got this situation where a national newspaper can openly, effectively call for a woman to be attacked in the street in this way, and there's no consequences.
I mean, IPSO, the standards body, says it's had a record number of complaints, many, many thousands. We don't yet know, I suppose, what IPSO is going to do about that. It might do something. We don't know.
We can be pretty sure the answer is that it won't do anything. And that's because, as I say, because they rely on this standards code that's written by newspaper editors, some of the loopholes they've put in protect them on issues like this. So in 8 years of its existence, IPSO has never upheld a single complaint of racism or sexism in the press at all. It's never levied a fine against a newspaper. It's never launched a standards investigation. It's not fit for purpose, and it's not fit for purpose by design. So it will be because of the way the newspaper industry designed it and set it up. So it will be extremely difficult to even find a point in the standards code to actually even hang a complaint on because its problems run so deep. Is
your point that in this particular instance, this is one man's column, this is one individual's column? So is the point that this wasn't a regular news story? Journalists could argue, if they wanted to, that this is personal opinion. This is his personal opinion. You don't have to agree with it.
That's one loophole that the Sun might seek to exploit here. Another is the fact that you can't actually make a complaint about group discrimination under IPSO's discrimination clause at all. This is all part of the reason why they've never actually upheld a complaint of racism or sexism, because the way the discrimination clause is framed, and the other clauses as well, to be fair, but certainly the discrimination clause is framed, makes it so difficult to ever actually bring a complaint that stands any chance of success. And even if a complaint was successful, the maximum remedy that IPSO ever awards is a mealy-mouthed correction 6 months after the fact, buried deep inside the newspaper. Now, if we contrast that with the Leveson system, we're talking about equal prominence, apologies and corrections on the front pages of newspapers when newspapers make egregious mistakes. We're talking about standards investigations that can lead to change at newspapers of the kind that Ms. Noakes was talking about. And we're talking about fines as well to potentially deter newspapers from this kind of behaviour in the most serious cases.
And so how would you reach the point, the system of legislation that you are describing? Because people watching might think, well, why don't we have this already then? If it's this simple, why don't we have it?
Well, it exists. All parties supported it. It was voted into operation about 10 years ago. There is an independent regulator. But a key kind of legislative mechanism that actually gets national newspapers to join an independent regulator, all parties voted to support it, but then the Conservative governments, several successive Conservative governments, have gone back on that and not brought that into effect. So actually, although the Sun is to blame here and Jeremy Clarkson has his share of blame and so on, actually, it's the government's fault, successive government's fault, for not introducing that critical piece of legislation that makes the Leveson system compulsory. If they had done that, then the Sun would be properly regulated and this kind of behaviour would not have been permitted.
I mean, a quick thought, the fact that there have been so many thousands of people who have complained, taken the time to complain, could this be a change, or at least a turning point, a fresh debate about all of this particular column?
Well, I mean, going back, we can look at the time in which a Sun columnist used language that echoed language that Nazi Germany used about Jewish people, and he used it about Muslim people, and that didn't lead to change. And we can look back just a year or so ago, or 6 months ago, when the Deputy Leader of the Opposition suffered misogynistic abuse in the press, and there were thousands of complaints again. Again, nothing changed. What needs to happen is that the legislators need to get their act together and take this issue seriously and introduce that small piece of legislation that makes the Leveson system compulsory, and then that puts an end to this.
Nathan Sparks, Chief Executive of 𝗥𝗘𝗦𝗦, thank you very much indeed.